look, we've had a very wide-ranging discussion. As an outsider, I'm in music, I'm just chairing here today. My sense is that you guys might be starved of the opportunity to talk to each other. I'm sensing a little bit of enjoyment of being together, of having lots of things to talk about and to share. Look, we've talked about the identity of people who make beautiful things out of silver and what to call them. So group identity and naming. We've talked about the requirements for skills acquisition or training, if it doesn't sound too crafts. Yeah. We've talked about professional reputation and status and whether that would be enhanced by formal accreditation or some kind of formal recognition. We've talked about tensions between commercial success and artistic flair and vision. I think for Gordon's sake, it might be useful if we address, first of all, the issue of training, of skills, and how to support young people, particularly who want to go into this line of work. Because I think that that's the question that the project turns upon, and then perhaps to broaden from there. So has anyone got strong views about this tension between silversmithing as a degree subject and the actual skills that would be required to make a success of it?
One of the things that Tim mentioned, which ties in with something that Grant mentioned earlier, about whether the artist, craftsman or the designer maker is the best vehicle for training the next generation or not, or whether that's happening. It is in part, I think, an economic. There is an economic block on that, in that the money is not available within a small artisan workshop necessarily to splash out on training an apprentice or the next generation. But there is also, as Tim mentioned, I think sometimes the artist craftsman working on his own over a period of 20 or 30 years, you didn't actually use this phrase, Tim, and it's a bit rude, really, but we do become one-trick ponies. We do a very particular kind of silversmithing within our workshops. We don't have a broad range, and that does make us nervous. That does make us nervous about taking on young apprentices, is that we're not going to have to give them a full spectrum of skills. And it may be that artist craftsmen are not the best people to be training the next generation, and there's a weakness in us there.
Okay. I would say what we do in music, of course, is get them young. 8 is quite late to start. And so you have 10 years of fairly intensive training before you think of leaving home, going to music college to be polished. So, maybe you need to hand out the blowtorches and soldering irons much earlier. Or perhaps think about identifying pathways at GCSE and A-level and BTEC in which relevant skills are fostered. So somebody might think, well, I'm not going to work with, precious metals right now, but I'm going to learn how to draw. Or I'm going to write about going to the gallery at Key Stage 3, and then I'm going to, so that there's some sense of progression, and that you, as a profession, would be able to go into schools and talk about what you do and identify how children might get involved or take an interest much earlier on. I would also say in music what we do is that we create a huge public interest in our subject by many people having had a go at it at some point and having experienced its difficulties. You create an audience who appreciate the skills of the elite few. And even at degree level with music, one of the things we think we're doing is creating curious and knowledgeable consumers of classical music. And I have to say, I can go to a lot of concerts and operas in London. I'm not quite so sure where I would go regularly to see different and interesting exhibitions of silver, yeah. So, yeah.
Just on the subject of education, should we be looking at the European model, which is kind of 2 to 3 years of technical skills followed by 3 years of what we would recognise as a degree? And if we should, how might we go about that?
Can I just say, I think the musical analogy is a very, very helpful one, because you don't learn playing and then theory. You don't learn theory and then playing. You learn the two in tandem. And I would have thought, by extension, it would be possibly, in an ideal world, one would learn practical silversmithing skills in tandem with learning the theoretical side.
I think there's a really interesting... We've, for a number of years now, been giving grants to local schools, both through the company and through the Members' Charitable Fund, and we've just funded a school over by Euston, where we've set up a small jewellery department. One of the greatest challenges we have in this country is that we've moved away at secondary from any kind of skills-based learning. We're not teaching people to draw either. The whole system is predicated on the idea that people arrive for a degree with a range of skills which are able to be developed further during the degree. And that certainly was the case 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when people did a foundation course before. But before they even did that, they learned to draw at school. They did metalwork at school. They did woodwork at school. And most of us encountered metalwork for the first time because our metalwork teachers went and did silversmithing or jewellery at college because they were interested in it. And I think we've got to understand that we need to create routes for people to engage with our subject. And the success that we've seen from the charitable investments we've been able to make, which have been very small scale, is that we've had 1, 2, 3 people from each of those courses coming here and going on our foundation programme. The parents come here and they look at this place and they don't think about grubby goldsmithing. They don't go to Goldsmiths Hall when they sign their indentures and think this is an organisation that's not worth a mint. You know, we are a valuable industry, and what scares me is the lack of aspiration that we're giving the young people that we're engaging with through our education system right now. You know, somebody said to me, and I won't name names, but they said to me, well, they don't have to worry because they don't have to pay it back if they have a student loan until they earn £20,000. We're not fine artists. You know, these guys need to be aspiring to be earning £20,000 in the first year of their time out of university. Why aren't we encouraging people to aspire in our industry? You know, why have we lost an aspiration to actually do more and to make money and to enjoy our careers? No one size fits all. Brett's model works for him. My model works for me. You know, everybody in this room has their own aspirations. Let's support those aspirations. Let's recognise and celebrate the individual, rather than what we seem to want to do in this country, which is to force everybody down the same sausage machine. We had a technical education in this country which was second to none. The German model that everybody wheels out as to why we should train and how we should train came from here. We just didn't adopt it. Because, get political, we let governments dictate education policy in this country. We do not actually, and we all know politicians like sound bites. You know, we've got a situation at the moment with apprenticeships where we're being told that we can no longer call the Goldsmiths Company's apprenticeship scheme, which has existed as long as the company has existed, an apprenticeship, because it doesn't receive government funding. Okay, what kind of crazy, crazy world are we living in? And we're arguing about, you know, niff-naff and trivia, to be honest with you. The big issues are that our young people are not being given the opportunities that they should be given, and we are weakened and we are reduced as a nation as a result. And if we can find a way through that, I, for one, will be very happy indeed.
I'm actually very interested. The 4 very young people have said nothing. And could I ask one of you, Dom perhaps, to just stand up and say, does any of this chime with you? Does any of this make sense?
Hi, sorry, I'm Dom Simon. I went to Bishopsland last year, but when you were talking about school, I was going to university to study marine biology, and then it wasn't until you have to apply for university just after Christmas, through UCAS. And it wasn't until July, I think, that my teacher, who did jewellery and silversmithing at school, just decided to throw in a module of metalwork for us. And I loved it so much that I went through clearing to go to Sheffield Hallam to then come into this kind of industry, which I'm completely happy it happened. But I had no idea about it before that. Like even through woodwork or DT or anything, like we never really touched upon it. And actually the more I learned from like going to Bishopsland and working with other silversmiths and jewellers, I actually knew nothing whatsoever. I think it should definitely try and filter through down to the schools.
I came from a degree background, so I started off doing a degree and then I went to Bishopsland, and now I work part-time for Richard. And one of the first things I noticed was how much the apprentice knew and what skills he had in comparison to what I've got. And I sort of felt to begin with, you know, maybe I should have gone through the apprentice route rather than down the degree side. But I feel like what I did learn from doing a degree was the design side of things, and that if there was a way to combine, you know, that design aspect with the apprenticeship and the skills that you learn, then that would be a massive benefit. But also what I have noticed, you know, I've got advice or received help from a lot of people in this room, and, you know, this is a great support network that you've got here, and I feel like I could approach any silversmith and ask them for advice or help, and they'd be happy to help me, which is a great thing that we've got here. So.
One of the things that has been occurring to me, and this is why I'm saying the Silversmith Development Programme, is that if there was a programme that said, this is a 12-year project to get you from being a graduate through to being a mature silversmith, and 3 years of it is degree level, improving, a bit of apprenticeship, a mentoring system, and you go through that, then you could end up, I know it's 20,000 hours of work, but I think the Goldsmiths Company could set out a very loose programme and interchange of knowledge.
I'm just going to finish off on that, because I think if you want to get it into the marketplace, you really have to ask your customers what you want. And it might not be that they want a piece of silver. It might be that they want a piece of art to put in their hallway of their smart new flats and things like that. It may not be what you want to make. It may be a piece of art instead. And many of the successful silversmiths today are making art rather than silver useful wares.
That's the point I was attempting to make, but I only had bullet points. Thank you.
Okay, well, we have gone over 4 o'clock, so it's just time now to wrap